Hi, we're here in Los Angeles with Kevin Teasley and Lamont Sydnor, and we're going to have them talk to us a little bit about how you're using Reason in your productions. So why don't you give us a little bit of background on what you do and why you do it?
Our company is called Distortion Music and Sound Design, and mainly what we do for the most part is distortion is we custom score and do catalog music for film, TV, video games. A lot of work in trailers, and starting to get more into doing things for more multimedia applications as well.
Great.
Yeah. Lamont's a drummer and a drum programmer. I'm a keyboardist and a programmer. So one of the things that we saw that was a need for in the production industry is that there's production music, that we all have music library stuff, and then there's a call for things that sound just like records. So we wanted to more cater to that clientele and that base, to work with people that actually make records. We all make records as well. So when we provide a piece of music to a client, it sounds like a record and not a piece of production music.
Exactly, yeah. So I know that you've been obviously using Reason since 1.0, so
Absolutely.
You've seen all of the updates that we've been doing over the years, and obviously now with version 4. So is there any one thing or a couple of things, it doesn't have to just be one, but anything about Reason 4 that really kind of changed the game for you and that kind of helped you in your productions?
I'm probably along with millions of other people, I'm a huge fan of the combinator, and being able to use the combinator with the multiple outputs in the hardware interface. Because when we do come to the studio where we mix here, it gives the engineer just that much more power to not only use the effects and plugins and mastering devices in Reason, but also to integrate that in real time. Still in the Reason environment, not having to print to stems or print into tracks yet, but just straight out of Reason into separate instrument tracks, and then routing into the SSL and using it that way. And again, I'm probably the biggest fan of the Abbey Road plugins, which utilizes that very, very well. When you have the room mics and the ambient mics and the close mics and the floor mics, we actually send those out on all separate tracks.
Oh, wow.
So that way, if we want to put an interesting delay on the close mic and put a chamber on the floor mic, just do different things, and it just gives us so much flexibility with it that way. And the way I kind of do it is, even working with Lamont before we bring it here, we all have the same sound libraries. So if there's a change and I say, hey, Lamont, the client wants the beat slower, I just send him a new Reason icon. He loads it up. The arrangement has changed. He sends it back, that sort of thing. And then we do the same thing here. Once it gets here, we do the same thing there. And that way it doesn't change the routing here with the SSL and things like that. It just keeps everything, because we work, the deadlines for what we do is a little different from records in that we don't have the luxury all the time of taking 6 months to do our opus, so to speak. We're working on very tight deadlines. So sometimes it's 24 hours.
Wow.
If we get 48 hours, it's like a vacation for us. It's like, this is great, But usually it's 24 hours to 48 hours, so we're having to work very quickly. Because most of the time, whether it's due to financial reasons or time with the clients, they want a lot of mock-ups a lot of times. So the sounds in Reason are incredible, where they sound very, very realistic. So when he programs a live drum beat with Reason drums through V-Drums or MPC, when the client hears that, they're not going, well, maybe this will sound right when we get it with a live band. The mock-up sounds incredible, so that way we're presenting them with as close as we can to the real thing. 9 times out of 10, and we laugh about this, 9 times out of 10, it stays the mock-up because it sounds that good, right? Clients, we don't hear that, but 9 times out of 10, it'll stay the mock-up. Unless it calls for something, more than the mock-up that we can provide in Reason. But
and Lamont, you use Reason in a unique way as well, because you're obviously a drummer, so you do a fair amount more of the rhythmic element. So how do you use Reason in your production, and have you found it useful for what you're doing?
When working with Kevin, we do a lot of hip-hop based tracks. So I would take the MPC and I would trigger Reason sounds into coming up to different tracks that we would use for custom scored and trailers or any other type of sound design stuff that he may need.
So you're using the MPC is essentially just a trigger at that point.
Correct.
Were you doing sequencing in the MPC as well?
Yes.
So you were sequencing, and then Reason was your sound source.
Was the sound source.
And then you would rewire that,
Rewire.
or stem that out later. That's great. Oh, that's really interesting stuff. So I think what we're going to want to do now is kind of dive in a little bit deeper into an actual session and have you guys show us a little bit of how it works behind the scenes.
Absolutely.
All right, great.
Well, I just want to show you guys how a typical Reason rack looks for us when we're doing a project. This particular project that we're going to talk about, I got a call from a client. It's a new Mitsubishi car commercial. And what they wanted to do is to have the song sound like a 70s classic funk cue that you might hear in the 70s. So immediately the task at hand was to not just write a cue that had some funky things in it, but to actually try to capture the sound and the vibe of the 70s just within reason. What the client asked me to do was to do a mock-up. Before they could approve the budget to hire live musicians, they wanted to be able to hear the song. The good thing about Reason is that all the refills and patches that I use are superior quality. So that way when I put live drums against it, sometimes you can barely tell the difference. And what I'll do now is I'll kind of go through the rack and show you the sound palette that I use in the rack. I start with the basic default Reason rack that starts with the hardware interface. And usually I just use the default mastering suite just to play it safe when I'm first starting a cue off. As I scroll down, I have Mixer 1 and Mixer 2. I just label them kind of simple like that because that's just kind of the way we've been working back and forth. We try to keep things labeled consistently so that there's no confusion when Ian's trying to patch things in later for a mix. I have a delay set up as a send here, a reverb 1 and a reverb 2. I have a Kunga Rex file that's from a Rex refill from the factory, a shaker that's from the factory, a tambourine from the factory sound set, the guitar wah that is from the factory sound set, and a guitar wah 2 that happens in the B section of the track. Here is where I set up the Reason drum kits, and I'm just using a combinator with the Reason drum kit. And what I do is I kind of set this up for my tone palette, and then what I do is after I set up the whole palette, I send that over to Lamont, and he programs the drums in and then sends that back to me. And for the piano patch that we use in the piece, I'm using Reason pianos, and the patch I'm using for that is Yamaha More Space. For my string falls, when you hear the cue, I'm using the disco string falls. I'm using the violins Marcato for my strings. It's a Reason factory patch. And my favorite of all is the Abbey Road plugin. I'm using the RT3 organ from the Abbey Road. I'm using RT3, R6 R&B ambient blend, again, which has 3 different routing possibilities with the top mics, bottom mics, and ambient mics. We were given just a brief on the direction, again, that they were thinking about going. Again, a 70s funky type of vibe. But they wanted to hear a mock-up. And so this is the mock-up that we gave them. And keep in mind, again, every sound that you're hearing, every single sound, piece of audio, is all sounds from Reason, either factory or some of the add-on refills you can buy. So again, every sound that you hear, the sequence and everything done in Reason. And what's really great about it is the whole workflow was done between individuals that weren't even in the same room. Again, I emailed Lamont an icon, he added drums, and then from this point, I sent it up to Ian, my engineer, and that's when he makes it sound incredible, like I know what I'm doing. I'm Kevin Teasley.
I'm Lamont Sydnor.
Thanks for hanging out with us here at our studio at Skip's Place. And whether we're making records,
or touring live with major artists,
or making commercials, TV trailers, or film, we use Reason 4.